Whew.
Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. If you are in our area, it's a rainy day, which is so nice. I was telling Kevin before we went live, I was like, man, I'm tired. I just want to sit on the back patio and listen to the rain. It brought such nostalgic memories. We have a family cabin in Arizona that my great-grandparents built, and it's in the mountains. It backs up to the national forest. It's incredible. And that's a key childhood memory is sitting out there and just hearing the rain start to fall through all of the trees. And we back up to a ravine that has some trees along a creek at our house. And so I got to experience that this afternoon. I was actually running away from my kids because I was trying to talk to my grandmother, and they kept finding me. So I went out onto the back patio and we were chatting, and the rain just started falling down the trees, and it's such a peaceful sound. I love listening to that.
The description sounds peaceful.
Yeah. You're just you can't be stressed out whenever you're just listening to rain fall through the trees.
Unless there's lightning and thunder.
It does. Well, I grew up in the Panhandle and went to school in Oklahoma. So I was joking with my parents. All the games, got canceled. Today's Wednesday. All the games got canceled on Tuesday, and it wasn't even raining, but there's a tornado watch. So the conditions were favorable for a tornado. And I was laughing with my parents. I was like, yeah, they canceled everything. I mean, I guess if you have hundreds of people at the park and something does happen, that's logistically kind of a nightmare. But I was up in Amarillo or in Oklahoma, we'd be nah, it's 10 miles away. We can finish this inning real quick before we need to go home. But yeah, not the case here. So I don't think any severe weather is coming, maybe thunder, but I don't get too twitchy about it. I don't know. It's fine. I know a lot of people do, but Anyways, thanks for joining us. My name's Katie Lovett. For those of you guys who don't know me, who are new here, thank you so much for joining us. I am a registered dietitian and the owner of Nourished and Thrive Nutrition Counseling. You can see our lovely little, I'm putting you the wrong way, lovely little logo here. And this is the Nourished and Thriving Show, and I'm happy that you're here. If you would do me a favor and go like this episode, go subscribe to our Eclipse Pain and Recovery channel if you have not yet, to get notified. We have shows pretty much every night of the week or every day of the week with different hosts, really great information from everybody. So you can get reminded and not miss any of your stuff. And just by subscribing, it makes sure that our stuff is showing up in your feed whenever you open YouTube. So if you do miss something, you can find it and catch up. So we're kind of doing a series. We're doing a series without you guys realizing we're doing a series, actually. But we're doing a series on blood sugar. Last week, I had Karen Kennedy on the show, and she is the author of Hack Your Blood Sugar. I have her book at my house. It is ridiculously dog-eared and sticky noted and underlined. Should have brought it here today, but I did not. So make sure you go listen to last week's episode. It was really great. Karen has been kind of a mentor of mine for several years now, and just a wealth of knowledge. And that book is very applicable if you are interested in blood sugar or anything like that. I'm giving her another plug here because it was just really, really helpful. I think it would be helpful for you guys too. So we're doing a series on blood sugar. So we had Karen last week talking about her book. I think we shared some great information that maybe you're not familiar with or you hadn't heard before. I don't know, Kevin, not to put you on the spot, but I am putting you on the spot.
While I'm drinking a soda. I know. I know.
Wonder what that's doing to your blood sugar.
That's what I said as soon as I picked it up. That's literally what I said as soon as I picked it up.
Well, you could get a CGM and find out exactly what it's doing to your blood sugar, actually. No, but not to put you on the spot, like you don't have to answer if you don't know. What surprised you about that conversation last week? Because I'd read the book. I've been doing this work for a long time. It was probably a fresh conversation for you. So I'm curious if anything stuck out or was like, man, I didn't know that before. I hadn't thought about that.
I would say the first thing that was like, I'd say mind blowing for me was, I guess, how I don't want to say how little control we have over some things, but how much control they have over us.
Yeah, like give me an example, like stress or
what? Yeah. Right, and how that like just affects everything down the pipeline.
Yeah, everything is connected to everything, and it's like we are body, mind, and spirit, and if any one of those things is off, it affects everything else. Yeah, I think that's a great observation. I think one of the things that was my favorite thing about her book, and one of the reasons I've been drawn to Karen as kind of a mentor for the past few years, is she thinks about this the same way I do, in a lot of ways, is approaching nutrition and health and the continuous glucose monitor with a spirit of curiosity is what I call it. I love that she says this. You know, I think a lot of the time dietitians and nutritionists kind of get this reputation, or people have this anxiety that we're going to be really judgmental about what people are eating or doing. I mean, I know it can feel very vulnerable, right, to share what you're eating and all of that with somebody else. And you can feel like you're not doing it right or not doing a good enough job, and you really feel like you're doing your best, or, you know, if you're not eating in a way that supports your body, you're failing, right? And it's easy to get a little bit defensive in that. And so instead, if we can just pivot it and approach the CGM more the spirit of curiosity rather than a spirit of being judgmental towards ourselves, I think, you know, you can really gain so much from it. And her recommendation, really, like, live your life like normal the first like 1 or 2 weeks that you're wearing a CGM is so great, because then you're really like, let me try this and see, you know, let me see what happened when I drank that soda, you know, let me see what happened when I went out for pizza with the family. And you're just like collecting data the first couple weeks. And then you can either read Karen's book and figure some of this out on your own, or work with a dietitian like myself or like Haley, who's going to be on the show next week, and start to plan some experiments to do, right? So you can say, okay, we had pasta for dinner. I had a 70 point spike in my blood sugar. Katie said, eat pasta 2 more times in the next week. Yay! But one of those times after you eat it, go take a family walk for 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes around the block and just observe what happens. Is there a difference? And then the second time, instead of starting with the pasta, start with a side salad with a vinaigrette dressing and see what happens then. Do either of those help your blood sugar not be so spiky? And we'll talk through kind of why that matters, more in a minute. But you get to do these experiments and you get pretty much instant feedback. Like the CGM is checking your blood sugar every 5 minutes. And so you're going to be able to tell within those next couple of hours how that did. And then you can play with portion size and the order in which you're eating your meal. And so ultimately what it lets you do is tailor a really personalized diet to yourself versus just over restricting. I was actually talking with a friend earlier today who's expecting a child, and she failed her 1 hour blood sugar test and was upset, and then went in. So for those of you guys who have not been pregnant or have not been around someone who's been pregnant, you take a blood sugar test because gestational diabetes, is pretty dangerous. That's the diabetes you can get when you're pregnant. It can be dangerous for the baby, and it can increase your risk for having blood sugar issues later in life, the mom's risk. So you go in and you drink 100 grams of sugar basically, and then they check your blood sugar an hour later. And so it was too high at the 1 hour mark. So then what they have you do is come in and redo the test, but they check it every hour for 3 hours the second time. And one of her markers was still a little bit high, but she was beating herself up, like we all tend to do. I'm not doing enough. I'm exhausted. I already have 1 toddler. I work full time. I'm doing my best. I feel like I'm doing my best. I'm trying, and I'm eating more vegetables. I'm getting the protein. I'm tracking my food, which I feel like is a lot to log all of your meals. That's a lot for me to do. So she was putting in a lot of effort and still kind of walked away from her appointment feeling like she wasn't doing enough. So she was talking with me and she's like, well, I guess I just need to cut out all gluten and all dairy, and go from there. But that's kind of what we tend to do without data and without the right information, is we tend to over restrict that. And we're like, well, I'm just going to cut out all carbs. I'm going to go keto, and that's not necessarily necessary either. And then what can happen is you miss out on other food groups and other nutrients, or it becomes unsustainable because it's so restrictive. You have a hard time living your life. And we've talked about this before, where you have to remember why you're doing this. And most of the time, people are making healthier options to avoid a prison of illness, right? They want to be able to do the things that they want to do, live the life they want to live with the people they love. And what can happen if we move into this overly restrictive space is you're trapped in a prison of diet and lifestyle restrictions, right? I have to go to the gym every single day for an hour. I have to, avoid all gluten and dairy. I'm only eating keto. I can't eat out at restaurants. I'm bringing my food scale into a restaurant to make sure I'm hitting my macros every meal. And that can actually kind of venture into disordered eating, which is more like orthorexia, which is like kind of obsessive with healthy eating and or healthy lifestyle stuff. But it's easy to slip into that when you don't have the information you need and you feel like you're doing a lot of things and you're still like failing, right? So that was that conversation. We were talking about potentially using a CGM for her and how it could actually open her up and help her pinpoint where exactly her body is struggling, and where it's fine, so that she's not having to be as restrictive in her life. And I'm noticing that in my patients too. And I'm noticing it, a lot of the time people think that they only need to worry about blood sugar if they have diabetes. We talked about this some last week, and that's not necessarily the case. I'm noticing a lot of the time if somebody is coming to me and they are just not able to lose weight. I have a patient right now who, came to me and she'd gained some weight and was frustrated. And I was looking at her food logs and honest, she eats healthier than I do, and I try to eat pretty well, but all whole foods, really hardcore, eating really well. And her scale was not budging at all. And she wasn't eating too many, her portions weren't too large, anything like that. And so we were just experimenting with her blood sugar a little bit to see what was going on. Through some gut testing, we realized, hey, the gluten is actually causing some inflammation in your gut. I think we've talked about that before. So we did cut gluten from her diet temporarily, and then we were paying attention to blood sugar and what was causing it to go up and what was not causing it to go up, and making some changes based on that. And she was able to lose 20 pounds. And she'd been trying for a year to lose some weight and hadn't been able to. So for some people, it really can make all the difference in the world whenever they're moving towards their health goals. And I don't know about you guys, but if you've ever tried to lose weight and just haven't seen the scale budge at all, that gets a very defeating feeling very fast. Very frustrating. So,
or if you see it move in the opposite direction.
Yeah, you're like, I'm doing all the things. Why am I gaining weight? Yeah, I've been there before too, guys. Dietitians don't. It's tough. Dietitians don't get to escape all of the health woes of. I'm just gonna say it, middle age. We have to go through all of that too, and our bodies change and shift, and what worked 5 years ago isn't going to work today, and all of that. So we're always having to evolve with our bodies. So. Anyways, so I wanted to go through a couple of different things about what people think versus reality, and what are some signs to look out for that, hey, maybe blood sugar is contributing to my health symptoms. So the first, something that's come up, right, a couple of times with just those couple of stories I shared just now is I eat pretty healthy. My A1C is normal. My hemoglobin A1C, which is your 3-month average-ish for blood sugar, it's calculated. It's not exact, but it's about an average of your blood sugar for 3 months. It's normal. So blood sugar must not be contributing to anything. I eat healthy. I'm active. So it's not my problem, right? It's not something I need to consider. But really, the majority of Americans are struggling with blood sugar control issues for one reason or the other. And so what I see in people that kind of is like a light bulb in my head of hey, this is something we need to explore for you, is if you're having energy dips throughout the day, particularly in the afternoon, if you're having cravings that just feel like they're kind of controlling you a little bit or a lot of it, if you're having some inconsistent meals where you're snacking throughout the day, or you're skipping a meal and then having seconds or thirds of dinner because you're so hungry by the time you finally eat. Your stress patterns, you're under a lot of pressure at work, or you've got a ton of moving parts in your family. That's always something to consider. The stubborn weight, like I mentioned a minute ago, stubborn weight despite feeling like you're doing more. I started exercising more. I started eating less. I started tracking my food, and this is not budging. Those are kind of some of the things I look for whenever I'm working with patients, and I know Haley looks for as well with her patients. So some questions that you can ask yourself if you're not working with a dietitian or you're not working with us. Have you ever felt, or do you regularly feel, I would say more than 3 or more times a week, do you feel tired in the middle of the afternoon? You need that coffee. You need that sugary snack. You need that Alani or whatever caffeine drink it is that you're reaching for to help you get through the rest of your day. You feel shaky or hangry if you don't eat. I think we played the Snickers commercial for you guys a few weeks ago, right? Where, the football players were turning into Betty White because they were hangry. I love that commercial. I love Betty White. So, you're real shaky. You're like, oh, I've got to eat now. That's a blood sugar, like red flag alarm going off. You're constantly thinking about food. That can be you're just not eating enough calories, or you're not eating enough of a certain macronutrient. Remember, those macronutrients are carbohydrates, protein, and fat. Those are all calorie containing nutrients. They're the macros. If you're constantly thinking about food, you're either having some blood sugar issues, or you're just not eating enough, or not the right macros for your body. Or you don't feel like you're that hungry. And then you're starving, and you're kind of going between these, like, I'm not very hungry, I'm just going to have some crackers. And then 45 minutes later, I'm not that hungry, I'm just going to have, whatever other, like, typically carby snack is available, because that's what sounds palatable if we don't feel like we have a full appetite for a meal. Or subconsciously we can think, oh, I'm just gonna have a piece of toast, that's not that much. I think women especially, I don't know, do men feel like this? I'm just gonna have some crackers, I'm not that hungry, I'm trying to cut back, I'm gonna have just a piece of toast. I feel like that's more women eating smaller, lighter fare, and we feel like meat or fattier foods, or like the more hearty foods, are more calorie dense, which they can be, but they're also more macro and micronutrient dense and better for our blood sugar.
I think that hits us with snacks.
Okay.
Cookies.
Tell me. Yeah. Cookies. Chips. I'm not
probably more of the
a
unhealthy stuff.
Yeah. So you're like, I'm not that hungry, I'm just going to grab cookies or some chips. Those are great. Yeah. I'm not a sweet tooth anymore. I used to have a sweet tooth as a kid.
I've got a horrible one.
I just don't. And I'm very particular about dessert. I'm not going to grab like packaged cookies from a grocery store. Like, no, they're so gross. I'm so bougie, and my kids are the same way.
Look, I'm bougie too, so I don't grab necessarily the packaged cookies.
Okay.
I like the homemade ones that someone baked and brought in to sell at the gas station and such.
Oh,
yeah.
See, if you go into the gas station when you get gas. We've been over this before. You men, y'all go pump your gas, and then you go into the gas station. If you just don't go in. That's a guy thing. You just don't go into the gas station. Problem solved right there. He's scratching his head at me.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure how to make new habits.
Yeah. You got to create the environment for the habits to thrive.
Or like, what was last week's the lady's name?
Karen.
Again? Karen. Yeah. Being intentional.
So
setting up that plan and execution.
Yep. Not going into the gas station. It requires intention at
Park
first,
at the
sure.
furthest pump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just tell yourself, I'm not going in. There's a book called Be Your Future Self Now. If you guys haven't read it, it's a good one. If you're like, yeah, someday I'm going to be like this. Someday I'm going to do that. And it's like, well, start being that person today. Start making the decisions that future version of yourself that you want to become would make. Because as long as you're not making decisions like that person, you're never going to become that version of yourself. That's pretty powerful whenever I first heard about that approach. But anyways, that we kind of went off on a tangent there. So those are kind of the rhetorical questions you can ask yourself. I'm going to go over them again because we went off about cookies and gas station food again. But if you've ever felt, or if you feel, 2 or 3 times a week or more tired in the mid-afternoon, you're reaching for coffee, something sugary, something with caffeine to get you through the day. You're feeling, kind of shaky, hangry, Betty White-ish in the Snickers commercial if you're not eating. You're constantly kind of thinking about food. Food's kind of always on the back of your mind, or not that hungry, kind of snacking and then starving, or just kind of snacking, you're hungry more than every 3 to 5 hours. Those are all things to consider. Hey, maybe I need to look at my blood sugar. But then again, if you go to the doctor They're going to maybe check your fasting glucose and your A1C, which is your 3-month average. Those can both be okay, and not really give you the full picture. So that's where asking also for that fasting insulin is really helpful, because we see fasting insulin go up before we see fasting glucose go up a lot of the time. And then the CGM can be really helpful to give you the full picture, because your A1C is an average, right? And so you can be spiking and crashing all the time, but still averaging, the normal amount. So it doesn't really paint that whole picture for us there. So I want to go over what are the core things that I see that are the issues. So you've asked yourself some of those rhetorical questions. What are the core things I see in my practice with people, struggling with blood sugar issues, and why they're struggling with the blood sugar issues that are kind of driving that. So number one is kind of a trendy answer, and I considered removing it because I don't like just feeling like I'm pandering to a trend. But it's true, and it's trendy for a reason sometimes. So pattern one is undereating protein. We're not getting enough protein. You guys saw it when I reviewed Keith's food journal, a few weeks ago. He's getting half his protein needs. If you missed that episode, go look. I guess it was, a month ago now. Go watch that episode. If we'll probably try and link it in the show notes, I bet, for you guys. Go check that episode out. If your diet looks like his, or just go think about, what protein foods am I eating and about how much am I getting in a day. You're probably under eating it unless you're intentionally working to eat enough protein. Protein's important for muscle. Muscle is a dump for carbohydrates. So whenever we store glucose, we're storing it in our fat cells and in our muscle cells. And so if you don't have a lot of muscle, your body has no other place to store it than making new fat cells. Making more muscle requires two ingredients. It requires tension, time under tension, and it requires amino acids to build the muscle. Those are the building blocks of muscle. So by having more muscle mass, you have more places to store glucose that is not fat. And so it becomes really important. You become more carbohydrate tolerant when you have more muscle mass. And we talked a few weeks ago about how as we get older, we see our muscle mass start to decline gradually over time. And that's one reason why people become more insulin resistant or carbohydrate intolerant as they get older, is because that muscle mass is going away. So by eating enough protein and weight training, which y'all can catch Jose's show to learn a little more about that. I know he's talking more about baseball and stuff, but he does know a lot about, strength and conditioning and weight training as well. Wealth of information with that. It's going to help out with your blood sugar as well. And so that's kind of what that looks like in real life, is if you're, you think about elderly people who struggle to get around, they're losing their mobility, and some of that can be things like arthritis, past injuries that have inflammation and all of that. But a lot of the time they're weak, right? They're frail. They've lost that muscle mass. And they fall down and they can't get back up, or they break a bone, and muscles are important for bone health as well. And so by getting enough protein and weight training, you're helping your blood sugar, you're increasing your quality of life as you get older. So it's really, really important. I was going to mention this later on, and I probably will still mention it later on, but I'm going to mention it now too, because it's important. And it's something called the proteinification of food. Have you guys seen it? Do I need to explain what that is for y'all to pick up on what it is just by me saying the name? The proteinification of food. They're adding protein to everything, right? Everything has protein in it now.
I don't know why it's just coming across my mind. Is it Californication?
Californication, that's a song.
Yeah, okay. Proteinification.
Proteinification. Have you noticed that they're adding protein to everything?
Everything, yeah.
Everything.
Oh, yeah.
Everything. The problems with this, there's 3 of them. Let's see if I can keep track of the 3 of them that just popped into my brain whenever I was going to explain the problem with it. First of all, A lot of the time it's in ultra processed food, which is not super nutrient dense, has other things that can cause harm and inflammation in your body. Second of all, a lot of the time whenever they're adding in this protein, it's 5-7 grams of protein. And you might think, well, every gram helps. Every gram gets me closer to my 100 or 125 grams or whatever my goal is for the day. So cool, I just got 7 grams of protein by drinking my sugary coffee. The problem with that is protein has 4 calories per gram. In order for the muscle synthesis switch to get turned on, or the muscle building switch to get turned on, your body kind of needs a bolus of protein of about 20 to 35 grams all at a time. So if you're getting 7 grams here and 10 grams there and 5 grams here, you're getting calories, and yeah, you're getting some amino acids, but it's not actually enough in any one setting to turn on that muscle building switch. So you're just can add calories throughout your day, which ultimately makes blood sugar issues worse. And then the third issue with that proteinification of food is a lot of the time it's just not very high quality protein. I think FDA doesn't really regulate, what counts as a good source of protein, what doesn't count. We looked at a food. There's some bar that we looked at, and it was like, I don't know if we looked at it. I think I was going to mention it. And it wasn't protein. It was calories, I think, at the David bars. They were in like a lawsuit. Did we look at those on the show, or was I just thinking about it? And I think I forgot to mention it on the show that week. It was all over the news a few weeks ago. But there was this like lawsuit because they put I think it was calories. They put a certain number of calories on the package, and then tell me they weren't looking for a lawsuit with this. Ready? Somebody went and put the David bars in a bomb calorimeter, where you basically like explode the food and see how much energy it lets off. That's how you measure calories. And it came off as higher.
Seriously?
Yeah, that's what they do.
You can explode food?
They put it under a bunch of pressure and see how much energy is in there.
Wow.
Bomb calorimeter. So they put this bar in there and realized, hey, there's way more calories in here versus what they're putting on the package. So they're suing the David Bar Company for, misrepresenting their food, for falsely labeling it. But the issue is our bodies are not bomb calorimeters. And so there's an ingredient in the David food that, yes, has energy and it has calories, but our bodies cannot absorb it. And so it's not calories that our bodies are actually absorbing. So it opens a bigger can of worms about how to label food and stuff. But same kind of goes with protein. I kind of went down the rabbit hole with that, where, if you don't have all the amino acids, we need 9 essential amino acids. So if they're adding protein from other sources, are you getting a balanced protein source throughout your day? Are you getting the essential amino acids that your body needs to actually build muscle and to have a complete protein? Or are you just getting extra calories in throughout the day? Does that make sense? So the proteinification of food, watch out for that. Eat real food in a meal.
Or you'll end up being the bomb that explodes.
Maybe.
I'm just thinking about how much weight I've gained.
Yeah.
7 pounds so far.
Yeah. But you're weight training and stuff, right?
Yeah, but I found out last night I'm almost 20 pounds heavier than Dr. Leak, and I'm 3 feet shorter for some reason.
3 feet. Wow. Well, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I have some thoughts. But
Jose's told me at some point it starts to shave off, and then the muscle becomes a little bit more leaner for me. So I'm just working through it.
You're just going through it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of the pattern one that I see is under eating protein. Pattern 2 is long gaps between your meals when you're not intentionally fasting. So I do use fasting in my practice sometimes when it's appropriate as a tool to help people with blood sugar regulation and weight management. We have to make sure that there's no history of disordered eating, the person's in a good place, all of that. It's under, supervision and everything. There's a difference between intermittent fasting and time restricted eating. A lot of the time people call everything intermittent fasting. Really, if you're not eating for 12 hours overnight, that's just normal. That's like ideal what people should be doing. We should be giving our digestive systems a rest for 12 hours overnight. But then there's the 16-8 window, and they call it intermittent fasting. It kind of is. It's more time restricted eating. You're restricting your eating to an 8-hour window. Intermittent fasting is I am going 24 hours without food. I'm fasting intermittently, and it can be a really helpful tool. But what I see more with the problem side is when people are skipping meals. And it's not part of an intentional fast. It's, I got busy at work. I didn't stop to take a break. And then they're getting seconds and thirds and they're eating their dinner super fast because they're starving. And then they kind of justify it and rationalize it in their brain. I didn't eat lunch, so I can eat whatever for dinner. And that can cause a lot of issues. And what happens on like a blood sugar situation, a lot of the time people can handle a certain amount of carbohydrates at any one time. 50 grams, let's say. So maybe someone can handle 50 grams of carbohydrates pretty well. If they eat more than that, their blood sugar goes up because their body has a harder time storing that extra glucose. It takes longer because it's more. Think about, I'm trying to think about something. Let's do kids, right? You have one kid, easy to manage. You're on time to everything. Your house is picked up. Your laundry's taken care of. It's one kid. You've got 5 kids. You're late to everything. Everything's a mess, right? Same thing. So, let's say your body can handle, 50 grams of carbs, no problem. But then, you are skipping lunch, you have, sugary cereal for breakfast, then you're having sugary coffee mid-morning, then you're not eating anything until 7:00, and you go hog wild and have 3 plates of dinner, all of that. Well, that's like 5 kids, right? It's the whoa, this is too much at one time. Blood sugar goes higher than it needs to, and it stays higher longer because it takes your body longer to clear that from your system. And so that long gaps between meals physiologically is not ideal. Whenever somebody is doing an intentional fast that we're helping supervise for them, we're actually doing a pretty calorie controlled meal that is lower in carbohydrates at the end of that fast. So what someone might do is like a 24-hour dinner to dinner fast. So they eat dinner. It's going to be a pretty low to moderate carbohydrate dinner, calorie controlled, moderate amount of calories. They're not like, I'm going to have 10 slices of pizza because I'm not eating again for 24 hours. None of that, right? We're eating a normal low to moderate carbohydrate meal, and then we're going to bed. We're sleeping 7 to 8 hours overnight. We're getting up, we're going about our business, and we're not eating until dinner. And that dinner, you're going to break your fast with dinner, and it's going to be low carb, moderate calories again. So your blood sugar doesn't jump up. So how you break your fast is just as important as the fast itself. I don't encourage anyone to go fast without medical supervision, by the way. I was just giving an example of what we do in our practice whenever we're helping. But long gaps between meals, skipping meals, it kind of gets you on both ends, right? It's either, I know I'm not going to eat lunch today, or I'm not going to have breakfast tomorrow, and so I'm going to go crazy tonight. Or I went crazy tonight, so I'm going to skip meals tomorrow, and then you end up kind of going overboard at dinner the next night or at lunch the next day. And that can also be stressful on your body on both ways, right? It is a stress to go without food for your body. There's good stress and there's bad stress. Sometimes stress can encourage our bodies to heal themselves a little bit, but sometimes stress just contributes to inflammation. That's another reason why fasting needs to be done under the care of a healthcare professional, because we are able to see the bigger picture and know when it's appropriate and when it's not. But eating too much food is a stress on your body. Your body's, think about the 5 kids situation, right? Think about how much more stressed out with 5 kids you are with 5 kids than 1 kid. 1 kid, you may feel stressed out. You may think it's a lot, but it's really, then you get 5 and you're like, whoa, I had it great with 1 kid. I had no idea. Eating too much food at once, your body's now like trying to create these systems and this, they're like, our blood sugar is going wild and we like it to stay in this really tight window and like pump out the insulin, like put all the stressors on all of the organs. It's too much. And then what happens is your blood sugar's up. Your body's kind of freaking out. They're like, make more insulin, pancreas. So then the pancreas pumps the insulin and it comes up to meet the blood sugar. Well, it makes too much. And so then your blood sugar tanks. And you have a huge energy crash. Maybe you feel shaky again. Maybe you're reaching for caffeine. Maybe you're needing a nap. All of those things. So it can just be this like crash, spike cycle that we really kind of want to try and avoid. That's the long gaps between the meals. Does that make sense? Pattern 3 is stress driving everything. Karen and I thought, a pretty good job of talking through stress last week. So if you want to hear it from someone besides me, go listen to that episode. It was really good. And again, her book went into pretty good detail and she gave some pretty good case studies from patients in her book as well, on that. But basically, when we've talked about this before, cortisol is a stress hormone. There's actually other stress hormones as well. But cortisol increases your blood sugar so that you can have sugar readily available to run from the saber-toothed tiger or whatever it is your body thinks is going to attack it, whatever comes. And we talked about too, stress can be, happy things can feel like stress on the body too. If you're just like amped up about something, or you're a higher energy person, or you're excited about something, that all can kind of register biochemically the same in your body as stress, and it can increase your blood sugar. So you're like ready to go and amped up. And then pain is a stress on the body. Inflammation is a stress on the body. And so again, what can happen is we have like higher blood sugar as a baseline. Our body's trying to produce more insulin. We can get those crashes, and then we eat probably something that's not super balanced, that's probably more carby. We jump up and we crash. We jump up and we crash. So stress can drive all of that. Pain, inflammation, chronic illness, all of that can cause all of that. So the reason I'm saying that that's important is sometimes it's not the food. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you may have a temporarily lower carb tolerance than you otherwise would have if you're going through a period of stress or inflammation or pain or illness. Sometimes it's stress and not the food. Sometimes your body really is handling the carbohydrates okay. You're eating an appropriate amount for your body and for your body's needs. And it really is the stress that needs to get checked out. I'm going to share the story again about the dietitians. She shared, she was laughing. She was like, we talked a few weeks ago about like different personalities of different professions. I think it's so interesting to just kind of observe that. But dietitians tend to be pretty high achieving, tick all the boxes, a little type A. And so, she was saying she would have dietitians come to her for help with blood sugar stuff. Dietitians need dietitians and nutritionists sometimes too. It's just helpful sometimes to have that objective perspective, right? We can get too emotionally involved in our own stuff. So she'd have, dietitians, and she'd be like, their food journals are perfect. They're eating really well balanced things. But they're like too revved, they're too type A. And so like going into the room, when they get home from work, into their bedroom and just laying with their feet up against the wall and an eye mask covering their face and like listening to some calming music for 10 minutes made all the difference in the world. For these dietitians. So it may not be about changing your food, but if you don't have the data to know, you are just going to be stuck wondering and maybe feeling frustrated because I tell you, if you're doing all the things and tracking your food and eating well and you're not achieving the health goals that you have set out for yourself, That gets very frustrating. And then you get stressed because you're doing all the things and you're not seeing results. And then you get stressed, and then that makes your blood sugar worse, and it just spirals from there. So, okay, the last pattern I'm going to share with you guys is healthy but not nourished. And this goes kind of back to that proteinification of food. You're eating like healthy convenience foods. So bars, protein, like the clear protein powders or the protein cookies, or, whatever that is, the convenience foods, the energy drinks, all of that. A lot of the time it tends to be kind of low variety. You can be missing some key nutrients. And without certain nutrients, like we've talked about before, our bodies can't function the way that they need to. This actually kind of pushed also in like the fitness world, or macro counting world, or trainer world. I've seen it on like Instagram. I've heard it from other people, and it's not wrong, but they say like the people who lose weight that they want to lose eat the same thing every single day. And that's not wrong, right? Like they figure out their macros, they figure out the meals that work for them. And it's just easier to just like rinse and repeat every single day. And I think that there's sometimes some value for that for a while. It helps reduce decision fatigue. It creates those intentional habits like you were mentioning, Kevin, like parking farther away from the gas station. It's like, this is my grocery list. It's my saved order. I order this stuff every single week. I just push a button. It comes up. I don't have to relearn how to prep this food. It's the same as like, making dinner. It's a lot harder to make a new recipe than something that you've made 10 other times before. And so if you're feeling a little bit stretched thin and all of that, it's easier to just rinse and repeat, do the same thing over and over again. So there is value to that. But at a certain point, like seasonally or, every 6 weeks or whatever, take a look, swap a veggie, swap a fruit. Get some different color, get some variety in there. And I mean, gosh, I rely on convenience foods that are healthy sometimes too, you guys. I feel like I live in my car a lot of days. I'm in my car probably average of 3 or 4 hours a day, just driving my kids around. And then I'm seeing patients back to back. I'm doing laundry. I'm doing dishes. I'm here with you guys. I have zero downtime, and so Monday, I think it was, I was prepping meals for the week for our family. I made a bunch of protein in bulk, some grains in bulk. I made a tomato and cucumber salad that's sitting in our fridge ready to go. Today for lunch, I grabbed a bar because I needed to go meet with a friend who just needed to talk with a friend for a little bit. And so I grabbed a bar on the way to go meet with her. I do it too. It's just, are you doing that more often than you're eating real food? And is it kind of becoming the default? Does that make sense? So those are kind of the 4 patterns. I'm going to go over them again for you guys. So under eating protein, long gaps between meals when you're not intentionally fasting, stress driving everything, whether it's happy stress, bad stress, pain stress, whatever kind of stress it is, assess that and see, how much is this contributing? And then like healthy but not truly nourished is another thing that I see pretty often. Just a reminder, like I've said this so many times, you guys know this by now, but your body isn't just counting calories. It's responding to everything that you're putting in. It's responding to its environment. And that includes the people you're surrounding yourself with, the thoughts you're allowing to take hold in your mind, the drinks you're putting into your body, the amount of sleep you're getting or not getting, the food. Food is really information, and it tells our body a lot about how we want it to operate. And so really thinking about, what inputs am I putting in, and are the outputs that I'm expecting consistent and realistic with the inputs I'm putting in? It is a formula to a certain extent. It's a mix of science and art, but a lot of the time people expect we've said this before, we expect our bodies to magic health out of garbage, and it's like, we're not giving it anything to work with. And we're like frustrated with our bodies for not doing what we want whenever we're just not giving it the tools it really needs. So that's, really why tools like CGMs can be so eye-opening. And maybe you decide, okay, I ticked a couple of those boxes to those rhetorical questions Katie asked. I've been dealing with some stuff for a while, and I've been a little bit CGM curious. I've just been too scared to try or wasn't sure how to get started. I'm going to do it. Awesome. Maybe you'll learn some stuff. Maybe you'll be more confused and need some guidance. We're here to help you if you need that. Or maybe you'll be like, actually, my blood sugar is totally fine. Okay, that's not part of the issue. What's next? Approaching it with that spirit of curiosity. So it can be really, really eye-opening for you. I mentioned this a minute ago, but next week, Haley's going to be on the show with me, and she and I have been wearing continuous glucose monitors. I'm wearing one right now. And so we are going to be kind of breaking down the things we've learned about ourselves, the things we've been most surprised by, good or bad, the things that, didn't go how we thought it would. So if y'all have any questions about CGMs, drop them in the comments here, and we'll make sure, Instagram message me, and we'll make sure we cover them next week. But yeah, we're going to talk about kind of surprises, lessons, things that we didn't expect to see that we saw, and how we are supporting our patients as they use these. So we just thought it was really important, if we have more patients wanting to use these, that we try them ourselves, so we could really speak from experience about how they work and what we find. So that's going to be next week, Wednesday, 7:00 Central. Don't forget, if you are new here, please subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. If you enjoyed listening to this, please share it with a friend. Help us reach more people and help them if you know someone who needs to hear this. And don't forget to like this episode. It really helps us, and we really appreciate you guys helping us reach more people with this information. So that's all I've got for tonight, and we'll see y'all next week.